Welcome to Journeys in Podcasting. This is a midday session. I'm Chris Davis here in Bogota, and today we're going to be talking to Stephen Fragale, who is in New York City. I ran into Stephen this summer. He was running workshops in the Met on using Tiltbrush as a 3D sculpture modeling process. Stephen, who are you? What is your art background? How did you get into this?
Sure. Chris, thank you so much for having me today. This is really exciting to get to be here and share this with everyone. And so I came into drawing in virtual reality. I call it draw sculpting. I think the language is still being written out as we talk about it and put new words to the medium, since it is a new medium. I came to traditional drawing, traditional sculpture, and started finding ways to do that digitally and try to stay current using software like SolidWorks and Rhino and doing CAD modeling. I was a musical instrument maker, building guitars. I was doing a lot of inlay with CNC machines. That led to doing work smaller and smaller in the jewelry industry, where I got really involved with 3D printing, wax printers, SLS, SLA, a variety of different types of 3D printing to create jewelry, all through CAD modeling, and then bringing those digital assets now into virtual reality. And I've been researching here at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in their digital media lab with Marco Castrocosio, who's fantastic. And I was doing a traditional drawing, and he said, "This is great. Would you like to do this in virtual reality?" And I said, "What does that look like?" And I've had the best summer ever drawing mostly just in virtual reality. Yeah, so that's sort of how I came into this.
So from a school perspective, a lot of schools are teaching 3D modeling. A lot of schools have, good art programs, painting, drawing, and this seems to bridge into a lot of those. And that seems to be your path, is that you were already sort of in the graphic world and then entered this. How does this feel different when you enter virtual space and you can not just sculpt and paint, but you can climb inside of it and, walk around it? What's that experience like?
Sure. So you're in a classroom, you're in school, you're learning sculpture, you're learning painting, you get out of school, you're working on those processes. And for me, so at times they felt different, or I had to talk about each thing separately because of either that's a material constraint, it's how we talk about the mediums. And I think there are a lot of great artists that bring all of that together into a wholeness. And that's what I was really looking to be able to do. I think a big collector of tools and processes, mediums. And what this has allowed me is to be able to bring all of those things into one place, to one medium, to one environment, which is a new environment, which I'll speak about in just a moment as well. But it's a freedom to explore all of that and talk about it with a oneness, so that the thought, I think, can be more clear and with less limitation. So when you're in the virtual environment, say in Tiltbrush, and Tiltbrush is an app by that's now a Google application, and that is on the HTC Vive headset. And what that allows with that headset is room scale. So what that means is you're walking inside of a full room. You can move a couch out of your living room. You can push chairs out of the way in your classroom, and you can design a space typically around 10 by 15 feet, something in there, 2 to 3 meters, maybe 3 to 4. There's kind of a range. And within that space, you can draw freely. And where you draw with this digital wand, in the real world, you're leaving a digital imprint that you see in the headset. So what that allows you to do is, as you're painting, you're walking around the painting. You paint above you, and the paint stays above your head. And you can paint on the floor, and then you can be walking on this painted surface. You can draw characters around you and be interacting with them as if you were a character in an animation, a static animation at this point. Tiltbrush has just added a feature where you can import 3D objects. So now we can take scanned data, we can take scanned sculptures. You can go to a website like thingiverse.com, and you can download an OBJ file, and you could bring that into Tiltbrush and draw around it. You can create your own OBJ file as a CAD modeler and bring that in. So what you're kind of able to do is play with sculpture, sculpt, paint, and do it for the first time uh, in this very gestural and expressive way, where doing expressive sculpture, maybe a bizzetto or a small clay, like quickly moving clay, but this allows you to work as if you're throwing oil paint across the room and it just stays in that space. And I think that's the uniqueness of this particular application. Like you go in and you feel like you are a child just starting to understand like the laws of physics and how what you can do inside of it, except for now you're an adult and the laws of physics are just completely out the window. Super fun, inspiring, and a great medium to really explore.
No, a couple of things that I found really interesting you just said. One is the interdisciplinary nature of it, how before you had to think about these mediums as kind of separate kinds of thinking, separate ways of talking, and here it fuses them into one. And then you mentioned something that I didn't know that it did. I didn't know you could import imagery. Are these like 360 images that you can throw in, and then you're in this environment, or how does that work?
360 is kind of another thing, and that's not really what's happening in Tiltbrush. When you go into the space and you look around, you will see different environments that they've preset. And what you can do now is, while you're in an environment, it could just be a black, everything around you is black. You could have the night sky. They have a dress form that you can draw around, and there's sort of mountains in the distance as you're drawing in this space. What you can do now is, while that whole environment map stays the same, you can bring in your own sculpture objects. And that's an update that happened maybe a week ago. It's end of September. I think it was mid-September, maybe early September that feature came out. So that was something all summer. It was like, can this happen? This would be a dream. And so now those things, there's new tools that continue to come out. And I should mention, Tiltbrush came out. It was launched on the platform for HTC called Steam. It came out in April. So it had a rollout then, and there've been a lot of updates all summer long, and we're just seeing more and more tools become more and more available, which just makes it a more robust program.
Let's see if I can put some imagery up here that will give us an idea of some of the things that you're talking about. Can you see that image okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an example. It looks like you've created this with a gray backdrop. How does this work? Let me just twirl around here.
Yeah, so you can spin this model around. So this was drawn in that full room scale. So these sculptures, as they're drawn, like looking at, and this is inspired by Alexander Calder. I just thought what fun he would have doing something like this. And so I wanted to channel that energy a little bit, put myself in that mindset. And so the sculpture of the mountain on the bottom there, which is a red steel sculpture, is probably I'm drawing it. And then I'm jumping up to draw the mobile. His wire armatures from the circus are about eye level when you're in this space. And then his giraffe with another mobile hanging from the giraffe. So there's a couple of objects put together. And the way that I had worked on this specific piece, I was looking at a variety of inspiration from the Met's collection, from the Whitney, a couple of these places come from around the world. I think it's in Chicago. And so what I wanted to do was think about the room scale and design sort of a small gallery room that you can walk through these things in. And again, it's my interpretation of them. It's being playful with these models. And this was an experiment of using Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a great 3D model viewing platform that's web-based. So you can go online and upload your 3D model, and then you can embed this on your website. You can embed this on Facebook. I think they are on Twitter now as well. So, and you can explore more of their features. So what I did was, from Tiltbrush, I exported all of the drawing as a 3D model. So this is now a CAD model. This is all surfaces. I've brought this into V-Ray and rendered it with different material surfaces over top of it. So just sort of step one of the export, how can we start experimenting with these as models? All the surfaces that are exported from Tiltbrush are all flat, and the shaders that are in Tiltbrush, we'll see later how all this has color and it has a certain luminosity, etc. That information does not come through when you export the OBJ. So this is sort of the clay version of the drawing. But
this is really cool, because then it gives you a very concrete way of sharing it out to public. So
yes, Yes.
once the artist creates this, then you have a way of engaging with your with your community. Let's take a look
Right.
at another one. Oh, by the way, I think what you're looking at here, hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing, is
Yes.
your website. And so these are just, I think this is you here.
Yeah, so this was from that top image up there is from a project July 22nd when you and I met, Chris, at the Temple of Dendur in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This was a program put on with the Met Media Lab and the education department here. So we had Deborah was on the left at an easel doing traditional drawing models that are a little hard to see, but they're posed in front of the temple there, wearing a Issey Miyake-inspired black garment from the Costume Institute, and that garment is connected as a dress between them. So they are connected as they're moving and posing. Deborah was drawing them traditionally and going over some traditional drawing tools and exercises, just like you would do life drawing in a classroom, or talking about still life, drawing the architecture, drawing the space, the light, traditional what we think of as a drawing class. And we had seats for about 200 people to be able to draw along with her. And then I was showing new way of drawing that space using Tiltbrush. And so we had a large screen you can see in the back there, so people could see what I was seeing in the headset projected into that screen at the same time live. So I was drawing the models, drawing the temple. And it was just a really fantastic event to get to be a part of.
And I think Tiltbrush, the website shows, but here you get an idea of how much space it requires. I believe these are the sensors on the sides that are picking up your movements.
In front of the temple, between myself and the models, there's a little silver pole you can kind of see going up. So that's one corner. And then to the right, it's really hard to see, but basically by those steps over there, there's another one. And I try to maximize the amount of area. I mean, that space is really, it's a fantastic space to be in. It's really large. So I tried to use as much of the footprint that I could possibly take up. And I didn't realize the quickness of traditional gesture drawing, and drawing the models as they move, doing 2-minute poses, 5-minute poses, doing that in a full room scale where you're live sculpting, painting that. I was sliding around the floor quite a bit. I was really moving, and it became almost a dance. I was sort of choreographed as the models moved. They were sort of setting me up to how I was going to move in the space as well. And so it became a very physical experience in a way that I didn't even realize was going to happen.
Yeah, you mentioned splash painting before, and I've heard Jackson Pollock talked about as you're not really looking at the painting, but you're looking at a dance, the dance that he did around the painting, that his canvas would be flat on the floor, and then he would do these kind of rhythmic movements around the canvas.
Yeah, it's like a reverse engineering. You can look at the work to see the movement that created the work. And I don't know that's... I mean, what was interesting about that night, I mean, everything, just getting it set up and really running it, by the time it was in this space, I didn't realize what the experience would be to think of it in that way or this way. I really thought about it like a traditional drawing class, like here's the form, where's the weight of the object, where's the weight of the model, what leg are they leaning on? And I'm switching between the HTC. The Vive has a camera that faces out, so you can click a button and be looking out at your world as like a blue sort of line drawing, like a technical drawing. It like interprets the world around you. So I see the models in this blue light, and I click back and I'm in my drawing. And it was just such a quickness of going back and forth that it was only after I even kind of knew it's like how I was how quickly I had to respond and what that work ended up really looking like.
Now, is there flexibility on the space? Like, can you move these sensors back further and create larger spaces, or is it a very specific dimension it needs to be in?
I'm not too sure the space between the sensors, what that can be or has to be. I know they need to look at each other. I've set up the room several times, and there's a way to set up the room. There's a room setup when you start the application. Well, when you start the whole the Vive headset, it'll run you through a room setup. And I'm not sure how large it can be. I know that they've been working on ideas of using multiple sensors to create larger rooms. I think it's roughly that like 10 by 15, something around there is what works. I haven't tried to push it or minimize it. What you can, though, you can do now, another new tool that came out in September with Tiltbrush is the ability to scale your drawings. So when you do draw something, you can now grab all of those splines that you've drawn and scale them down or scale them up, so you're able to do some more exploration of scale within Tiltbrush itself.
Cool. Let me scroll down here. I can't play the videos live here, but for anyone listening, these are amazing because they're sort of like these transmedia creations on top of the drawings, which are played back in fast time. But then the narrations on top of them are really amazing as well. Is that something you also designed as far as the video clips that go with them, the kind of jazz drumming music that goes over it?
The first project that we did, that I had done with the Met Media Lab, where we were looking at Tiltbrush, was just like, let's do something. Marco had asked me, like, let's just do something that's, inspired by that can be sort of short and successful. And so I approached that as doing sketchbook drawings of things from the collection, which is that first video there. And when you do a drawing in Tiltbrush, there's a way to play back the drawing, and you see it built line by line very quickly. And I draw usually pretty quickly in Tiltbrush because I enjoy the expressive nature of it. So I don't like to spend too much time. I like maybe 15 to 30-minute drawings and see what I can produce in that time with a certain quickness. So, and I think that the video that you're over now, I'm going
to try to play it, see if it comes over on the screen.
Sure. So you're seeing as a sort of, I don't know if it's a little disjointed.
It might be kind of jumpy as it's coming across.
But each line that I had drawn, you see being brought back to life pretty quickly. So that 30-minute drawing can come back in about 45, 50 seconds. And I was just doing simple, just running it through iMovie and speeding it up so I could build together sort of a sketchbook of drawings and present them in a short video. And so when I was finished, I'd put the video together within a few days to present it, and back, and I was watching it. It was early in the morning. I was getting ready for an afternoon presentation, and my daughter, she's about a year and a half at the time, in the beginning of the summer, and she was looking at it and watching it and just sort of curious. And then on Spotify, a drum track had come on, and she just started dancing to it. I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to put some drums to it. So I got a studio. I had to present at 3. So I got a recording studio at noon. And from noon to 1, I put the drum track down and then just stitched it together in iMovie. And at I think 2:55, it was all ready to go for a presentation at 3.
So,
and I just wanted to, It was this whole process of working with Tiltbrush and doing these drawings was sort of about immediacy, about quickness, about lightness. I keep going back to Italo Calvino's 6 Memos for the Next Millennium. That's a text I like to reference quite a bit for my own work and thinking about virtual reality, thinking about CAD modeling. And so those were sort of some of his memos, his notes on the next millennium that he had written about in the 80s before he had died. And so I think that there is this, I think the lightness, the quickness, the exactness, those are all things that I'm trying to highlight and work on through this. But I could show you too as the video, because the video is a little disjointed, but if we can scroll down, there's a mask from Papua New Guinea, the Iharo mask.
This one here?
Yeah, and so just to talk about this one briefly too, to think more about sculpture and looking at creating sculpture. This is all sculpting by drawing in Tiltbrush. Yeah. So here you can zoom around and you get a little bit more of a sense of what it's like to draw in Tiltbrush. You can scroll, you can just zoom right in and zoom right through the mask, and you can be like totally inside of the paint. And part of that process for doing this mask was to get inside of it. We're totally
I'm doing my best over here.
You manipulated it so great, because that's the process. You can be inside the mask. You're inside of this sculpture looking out. You are inside the mask as you draw. And here what you see again, this is an exported, this is an FBX. The FBX holds color to your model. There's a lot of documentation on this online to find out about exporting OBJ, FBX, what those files mean. But here you have a a sculpture with color attached to it. Again, not the luminosity that you might get in Tiltbrush. It really is to be inside of the headset and experience this is very different than doing it on a 2D screen like this, but you can get a sort of vague sense until you get to really get inside the headset. It's really...
I haven't had much experience with the headsets, but even putting on Google Cardboard and being on a roller coaster,
Sure.
I had a hard time standing up. Is it disorienting? Is there nausea? It's like what goes on as far as
no? There's certain, like with cardboard and with here, like in Sketchfab right now, in Sketchfab in the bottom right corner, which I can't see because I have some windows up, or when it's not full screen, I'm not sure if you'll see, but there's a cardboard viewer in the bottom right corner. Do you see?
Oh, I see it right there. Yeah.
Yes. So you can view, what's great about Sketchfab too is you can go right into cardboard and view models. So now, let's say you're a teacher, you did a whole sculpture workshop seminar, and you've got the Google C1 tech glasses that are like, around $15 online, or you have a bunch of cardboards. There's ways to have these viewers. And anybody with a smartphone can go to Sketchfab, it's web-based, click on that view in VR, drop that into a headset, and you can see the sculpture that's in the classroom right on the headset in the classroom. I shouldn't say it's in the classroom because it exists in the virtual world. But we can talk about it in ways in the classroom, looking through these headsets, and then anybody with that headset can go to this link or these viewers go to the link.
And re-experience it as kind of a virtual 3D experience.
Yeah, you'd see it just how we're seeing it now, but in that cardboard. If you're and you said you've been in some cardboard features too, you would see it like that. So you're able to really look around. And to get back to your question about nausea and being able to stand up, when you're viewing through cardboard, there's one camera. Like right now, we're looking at this, and this is the export of a Camille Pissarro painting, inspired by a Camille Pissarro painting drawing that I had worked out.
You've taken the painting and just created like a 3D landscape.
It's inspired by the painting. So I was thinking about, okay, Pissarro's looking at a landscape that's obviously 3D, but where you stand to look at it, you're doing this plein air painting, and you represent it two-dimensionally on a canvas. So I was sort of thought about, what that's like to do plein air painting, being a painter as well. Well, how can I express that? Maybe something like the Natural History Museum will have these beautiful dioramas. How can I take that painting and build up this diorama or this surface? What would that look like? How could I layer, these plains and these fields, these trees, the people? How can I layer that and kind of create this another way to look at painting and sculpture? So the Alexander Calder room that we touched on first was really about designing the room and utilizing room scale. This painting I was inspired by to think about as diorama. And here we're viewing it like a sculptural object as diorama. So it's a couple kind of ideas coming together, I think. And you can see that these are very flat, graphic, matte, just strokes of digital paint. Whereas in the video, you see them like the clouds, it's just that flat blue right now really has it's like a smoke tool. There's a lot of splatter paint that's created, sort of gradations and forms within the tree and on the path and the figures. And they've become much more just pixelated, geometric, flat again. So the exporting as an FBX, it's a different experience than seeing it as a video. So it's sort of ways to explore. Are we creating animation, videos? Are they sculptural objects in this other way? So just a couple things that.
No, this is kind of mind blowing. I've seen the videos for Tiltbrush. You were the first person I actually saw putting it to a constructive use, like in an art exhibit. The idea of being able to go back and view process. In schools really big right now is this idea of not just focusing on products, but focusing on the process, the formatives of how to get there. And here you're able to go back and actually see the playback of the creation. I think that opens up a lot of capabilities as well. Yeah,
I'm really happy they have that as a feature to be able to see that. And also to that point, you can not only see it, you're sort of become director, right? You have your drawing get played back, how did you draw it? What was not only to see the process, but you start thinking about, how do I want the playback to show? Where is there an animation? Like we started talking about children's stories and maybe doing Harold and the Purple Crayon, and you see this line move and it becomes something. So it's not just the process for the drawing, but it becomes you're animating. And now not only you're animating this headset as it plays back, you're also now the director and laying it out. And so it's like, well, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work. And still it's like, well, I'd like to go back and edit this. And how do you... So there's a whole lot of disciplinary, there's so many things coming together in this experience. And there's still more tools coming out for it.
You know, I mean, just from a teacher's perspective in elementary school, we try to make reading come to life. And so let's take just like the teacher read aloud, for example. Some of the things we might do within that time segment is have students sketch, you know, what's going on, or you know, bring the discussion more to life by what they're sketching, and then have them discuss that and find the critical points there to discuss. But this opens up kind of a whole new participatory theater type, which is another way of bringing, another modality of bringing the reading to life, is to kind of freeze it, act it out, and then you have these like, you know, kids acting out these live roles. But this gives us a whole new dynamic of kind of fusing those two things together, where the read aloud could be full on artistic participatory movement experience. Like all these modalities coming together is just overwhelming.
And we're just looking at it again through the lens of Tiltbrush, and there are applications being developed now using motion capture. So as you move in a space, maybe with an Xbox Connect, I mean, there's a variety of tools that'll be coming into play here, and a lot of people trying to work. But maybe in a few years, your kids in the classroom are moving and they become digital animations of themselves because motion capture has captured that data, and you're able to bring that into a virtual reality environment. Like the interface for Tiltbrush is this drawing, painting, gesture. What if it's your full body through a motion capture sensor, and that you're fully creating animation by your own movement? Digital storytelling using software like Unity, where a lot of people are Unreal Engine, like these gaming engines to create VR experiences. The amount of immersive storytelling that we're going to see come more readily available is just, it's just absolutely inspiring to see it all. The stuff that Oculus is putting out, their content. So we'll see a lot of it, I think, for all ages, not just in Tiltbrush, which is participatory, but in other mediums as well that are just going to be more platforms.
And, you know, just before we started, we were kind of talking about where this is going. And as you're showing all these things, I'm thinking like, okay, what would a teacher do with this? How could we bring together a lot of the modalities that surround language? You know, we're so focused on language development in schools that it's almost an obsession, you know, what kids produce in speaking, what kids produce mainly in writing. But we focus so much less on all the precognitive stuff, the mentalese, as Steven Pinker calls it, that goes on before the words come out. And so here you could have full-on immersive environments where kids may not be, you know, linguistically challenged kids could still have immense forms of expression, which could then be bridged in, you know, to help their language along as well. So like an edu environment, this is just kind of like dream come true. The second is the collaborative potentials, to not just be you in that space painting, but have a group of kids in there together in this immersive interactive world. And I assume that is coming along, that, you know, that's part of the technology developing.
Yeah, and I haven't done a lot of VR collaborative work yet, but it's certainly and leaders in technology are talking about how critical that role is going to be. So I think we're certainly going to see a lot more of that. I think people are talking about the ethics of that, how people will interact with each other in this altered world, what that'll look like. But to your point about education and literacy and all of those points that educators, Jonathan London was an educator that I really took to, and his holistic approach of logic, reason, creativity, and intuition being this trifecta of structure for teaching and education, I think is so critical and so important. And I think the creativity is hard to always get in with art, music, where the logic and reason is pushed, because we can analyze it. You know, we can look at those things, we can test those things, especially looking at system, which I won't jump into too much, but the amount of testing involved sort of limits the amount of creativity. I think intuition doesn't show up on the radar of being able to be in the classroom. And I think what this allows, going back to process, is for a child to be fully expressive, logic, the reason, the creation, the creativity, and the intuition and drive that, the ability to have that intuition and have that confidence that I think is so important to be a whole person and have holistic education. So I think that this is going to be a great tool for everything.
Cool. You told me 20 minutes and we're like at 40. We can keep going.
I can talk for a little while. Yeah. I have some ideas, but that's the gist of Tiltbrush, and maybe a little of my thoughts on education thrown in at the end.
No, that's perfect. I mean, that's sort of the objective of this podcast, is to find people in their professional element, but then have them wander and have them push out into other areas too. Education is a very, I think, particular field in that the teacher has to play multiple roles of in theory, but also in practice. So the theoretician and the practitioner all kind of come into play. So it's great to take these new tools and really start thinking like, activity theory style. We throw a new tool into the environment. What does it do to that learning system? And how does it help us reflect on all of these cognitive processes that go along with it, from metacognition inside the head to the collaborative world outside? So this gives us a really cool tool to play with. I'm looking forward to seeing schools experiment with this. How do people find you? I pulled your website up there. Any publishings, blogs, work, exhibitions, workshops? What do you offer, and how can they connect with you?
Sure. Most everything right now is on stevefragale.com. And then you can follow me on Instagram at Stephen Fragale. And also check out and follow the Met Media Lab on Twitter, Instagram, and they on the Met's website, I believe the Met Media Lab just launched a new section on the website there. So blog posts are going to be coming out, and I'll be publishing on both. And I'm currently looking at the next place to be publishing and writing, and also exhibiting. So that's all.
Cool. Well, we'll end our broadcast here. If you would stick around for another minute, just so we can chat. And thanks for joining.
Thank you so very much. Thanks, everyone.